Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in this world. God bless you. This is Gloria White, coming to you from Utah, USA. I found an interesting study that Dr. John Campbell was discussing. Actually, it was several different studies, and I thought that I would share that with you guys. And it seems that our country is having a problem recognizing natural immunity versus everyone get the vaccine. And I'm not telling anyone to get the vaccine or not get the vaccine. But I do think it's important that everyone keep an open mind. And I feel for the guys in the military and those who have jobs that are being mandated to have this vaccine or lose their job or be, put on inactive duty in the military. So I think it's important that we look at this information and understand that at this point it is not just a religious, I say religious, I don't like the word religion. If you are a Christian and if you have objections as a Christian to putting the foreign substance, which has not been animal tested, nor has it been any long-term studying done, and the information concerning adverse events for the vaccine following natural immunization is not being discussed. And I think that even the adverse reactions that people are experiencing after receiving the vaccine without having natural immunity isn't being discussed openly. And I think that's a problem because we're ignoring an awful lot of medical brain power out there in our country and around the world that really could benefit people who believe that that particular protocol works, and that I've heard many people say that they have, recovered using the Indian protocol for the treatment of this virus. And so it's not good to have like American doctors like Pierre Corey, who has written a paper and is in the medical journal now, and it has been peer reviewed, and he's like ranks number 38, which is in the top 1%. And there's another doctor, Tess Lawry, I think, that she's like rated number 1. But it's interesting that they're both discussing this alternative medicine that India is using with a phenomenal amount of success as far as keeping their numbers down and for keeping the death count down. It's astounding when you look at it compared to the graphs for the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia. And when you see the data with your own eyes and you know that they're getting the data from reliable sources, then you really have to question, are we on the right track? Is a vaccine that everybody should get the right course? Or should we be doing what India is doing, and they're closely contract tracing people and administering kits that is having a phenomenal, I'm telling you, phenomenal um, results in the positive. So use your own judgment. I'm not giving medical advice, I wouldn't do that. Um, and I think it's important that as an American, I am allowed to voice my opinion. I'm not saying one way or the other is right, but to not look at the data coming from all sides is very close minded. And when you don't allow that kind of discussion, then I think you're moving toward an authoritarian type of uh, ruling of the people, which is very dangerous when you are in a republic and you're operating as a democracy. But we are a republic in America, and we elect our officials. Well, most of them, or should I say some of them. There's a lot that are not elected that have an enormous amount of power. And I think that that is a bad idea, and that we should have people running for these offices rather than being nominated for these offices. Um, I think the president should be allowed to pick his cabinet. But as far as appointing um, heads to departments and different government entities under him is a very bad idea. And some of the candidates that I've seen come before Congress are very concerning because they, well, for instance, the woman that is supposed to be in charge with the BLM for the whole United States has a record, a criminal record, that she was charged, but she worked out a deal, and basically she turned all the people she was, out there doing these shenanigans with, she turned them in. She turned like state's evidence. But the fact is, she was participating and leading these events. And the event was putting these big, long, like this. If you didn't look at this handle, this is a thing, and they were driving them into trees in the forest, so that when the lumberjacks went out there to cut them down, the chainsaws could break and cause injury. And then there was, I like this guy, Senator Johnson. Well, it wasn't Senator Johnson. Trying to remember his name, but I can't recall it right now. But he did a phenomenal job presenting evidence where a young 23-year-old man just starting his shift, and his job was to take the logs and put them in front to go through the sawmill, which the sawmills were huge to cut these logs. Anyway, just as the log hit the saw blade, there was a giant explosion which cut him like this and actually cut his jawbone in half. Almost killed the young man. He's probably permanently disfigured. And I tell you, he probably has PTSD and could never work in that industry again, or any industry that would use a high-powered machine, I would think. But it was really very sad. But they they were bragging about what they had done, and they were in favor of letting houses burn that were built in the forest. Just let them burn. just so they wouldn't be no one living in the forest. I guess you could call these people tree huggers. But when you endanger someone's life and brag about it, and when you do things that are illegal, writing letters and such, I mean, you could probably go look this up, but yeah, you could go look this up. But when you have that kind of activity, this person has participated in, and then you put them up for a very powerful position where they would have control of the forest and the BLM, I think that's insanity. And I know I'm not alone. But we have a lot of things going on in our country that have proved to be detrimental to our country. One is the closing off the pipeline and wanting to go green. But the dangerous part of this is that people need heat and they need electricity, or they need coal, or they need natural gas or heating oil to provide heat to their home, to keep their family from freezing to death. Our country, half of it gets very, very cold, and it wouldn't take long for a majority of people to freeze to death if they had no electricity or any way to create heat in their home. So I think that's irresponsible. It's irresponsible the way that they're allowing people to cross our southern border. And then the northern border with Canada, people from Canada can come into the United States, but Americans under Joe Biden's orders are not allowed to go to Canada. Would we be allowed to go to Mexico? I mean, can we even leave the United States by land? I don't know, but so we're looking at that. And then there's the debacle that occurred at the withdrawal of the our soldiers from Afghanistan, leaving behind Americans and 85 to 90 billion dollars of high-tech military equipment. So that was a total debacle. We have the president saying, they never told me that. I never heard that. And we have the military leaders saying, no, we kept telling him, but he ignored us. Well, at that point in time, knowing what kind of situation that was going to create, they should have been throwing those stars on the desk and saying, I'm not going to be part of that. Instead, all this happened, and there was a very brave Marine. And our Marines are very brave, and I think all of our soldiers are brave. Whether they fly planes or on ships out at sea, or in a submarine under the sea, whether they're on the ground, jumping out of planes like paratroopers. These people have signed up to protect our country. They could have done something else with their lives, but that's what they chose to do. And they're being penalized. And there are an awful lot of our soldiers who have come home from war that have, they suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I don't know who knows what post-traumatic stress disorder is, but it's after you've been involved in some type of traumatic experience. Like, say, for instance, a woman gets raped, getting in her car. Well, every time she goes to get in her car, she could be reliving that whole event in her mind over and over each time. And that's very hard to function in that with that post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, our soldiers, we have so many of our soldiers that are suffering with this, and they're really not getting the support that they need. Now, this Marine, I think his name was Scheller, Stuart Scheller, he addressed the military high-ups and called for accountability for what they had done and the way that they pulled out, and the 13 Marines that were killed because of this debacle. Not to mention all of them that gave their lives while we were in this 20-year endless war. And not having the military leaders have to show accountability. This Marine works with a lot of the soldiers in the military that have post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of that goes into how they are treated following their service. And a lot of them have been physically maimed and are missing limbs and eyes, and their faces have to be reconstructed. They've had burns over most of their bodies. It's not nice. It's not easy. And so they live with that recurring event. And they're trying to deal with that. They're not getting the help that they need to deal with it so they can get over it. That some of them hear a firecracker and they're immediately back in that situation where they're in danger, they've been hurt, and they're fighting for their life. And so this is a terrible situation to be in. And the way that we pulled out of Afghanistan has severely affected the soldiers that have post-traumatic stress disorder, the ones that served there and came back with post-traumatic stress disorder. So many of our military are committing suicide because they're not getting the help that they need. And now, with this having happened, and this Marine who works with a lot of the post-traumatic stress military said that it's severely affected them. It's making them question that, why did I got blown up, I've got burned, I've been, my arms and legs are gone, my eye, I can't see, I'm blind, I have a brain injury, I can't remember where, how to turn the stove on and cook a hot dog, or, I mean, these are real life situations that these military are dealing with. And I salute Stuart Scheller for calling for accountability. They have him locked up in solitary confinement, so he can't talk to anyone. He himself has post-traumatic stress disorder, and they have locked him up in a cell, in a military prison, in solitary confinement. And I am calling for accountability on his behalf, because it seems that in the military, he should have addressed it going from rank to rank to rank to address it. But he came out and did a video. I can't remember if he did a YouTube video or Twitter thing, but he made a video asking and saying what the problems were that these people that had been there were experiencing. And he was quite upset himself, you know. And did they take that into account? That he was having a post-traumatic stress, situation or event? No. They locked him up to shut him up. They put a gag order on him so he could not go and testify in front of Congress. They put him in a military prison in solitary confinement. Our country is going way off. Let's see, is that the right way? Yeah, because I'm backwards here. So it's not good, and we have things that are happening that shouldn't be happening in a free society, and in a society where we respect our military, where we respect our healthcare workers, where we respect our police and our firefighters and their ambulance drivers, the first responders, the ones that show up when we're in trouble. There's not a whole lot of respect coming out of Washington, D.C. for them. And that's not right. And neither is mandating something that's an experimental medicine that under the Nuremberg Treaty, it is against the International Nuremberg Treaty to use human beings as guinea pigs. And the reason that it's classified that way as human guinea pigs is because they didn't do the animal testing, and they have no long-term studies, 5 to 10 years, on what the long-term effects of this new technology, mRNA, is going to have on the human body. And we know that it did not create immunity to the point that you would not catch this virus. It only provided some protection. And because it's not like other vaccines that we've received in our lives, that we get immunity, like a natural immunity. Once you've had the measles, you don't get the measles. Once you've had the mumps, you don't get the mumps. But if you have the vaccine for mumps or measles, you're protected. But with this particular vaccine, there's no data to indicate that you're immune. It doesn't provide immunity. So why is it being pushed on people who have natural immunity? They're not respecting that. And there are a lot of doctors that are saying that it's better, more powerful, longer lasting than the vaccine. Now, they may take this video down. They may kill my channel. But as far as I know, no one's coming to my house to kill me. At least not yet. We may come to that, because it certainly has been shown that they can do what they call doxing, where they just destroy you. Your societal position, your job, they just totally destroy you. They kill your job. They kill your reputation. And this is where we're at, which is very dangerous. We've never as a country been like this. And I've noticed for a while now that I see members of Congress inciting riots. Fight like hell. What kind of thing is that for a congressperson to say? If you see them in the street, you push back and tell them they're not welcome here. A United States senator should not be welcome in the United States? Who gets to decide that? A loudmouth on the left side of the Congress? By inciting people? The honor and integrity in our Congress has died. For the most part, it's died. And the way that they talk to one another, the way that they conduct the committee hearings or meetings is just sickening to me. I absolutely just feel like throwing up, knowing the way we used to be and what we have now. So, considering I'm, operating in a spiritual sense and not in the worldly sense. So when I'm looking at all these events, I am lining them up with what's in the Bible, Scripture. And I see where one of the things that in Matthew 24 are that Jesus said famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. Well, when you read that, it's all three of those things in divers places, which means various places. So it may not be something worldwide. And this problem with this virus, this particular virus, is a lot of people are saying, oh, God did this. Oh, God did this to try to bring his children to him. God does a lot of things. And when God sends a plague, there's not going to be a cure. When God sends a famine where there's no rain and the bread supply is dried up and there's no water, there's not going to be any crops. There's not going to be any water and there's not going to be any food. God, when he says he's going to do something, he does it. He doesn't ask permission. It's not a republic or a democracy. God has not been elected. He is God. He's in charge of everything. So, excuse me. So what I want to talk to you about is the famine part. Now, we all know that there was a famine for Abraham and he had to go to a different area. And we know that all the story of Joseph, where his brother, he had a dream and all the other brothers were going to fall down and worship him. And they hated him and they threw him and sold him away. And he wound up in a jail in Egypt. And then, amazingly, he wound up in charge of all of Egypt. And because the Pharaoh had a dream of the 7 skinny cows and the 7 fat cows. Now, God told the Pharaoh in a dream that that was going to happen. So he prepared. Joseph prepared. He put back 7 years worth of food from when the crops were really plentiful. Fat cows. And so he was ready when the skinny cows showed up. Jesus said, don't be concerned about what you're going to wear or what you're going to eat or anything like that. But that was at that point in time. But then in Matthew 24, when he started talking about what would be the sign of him coming in the end of the age, he said there would be famine. and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. And if you look at that, it's all one sentence. So he's telling us, he's told us all things. And so having food put back is a kind of, thing that a Christian who looks at Scripture and can follow Scripture and recognize what has changed between don't worry about it to prepare. God had Joseph prepare. And if he hadn't, a whole lot of people would have died. And Jesus has said, famine. Well, to me, that means, hey, I got fat cows. I'm going to be expecting some skinny cows, and I need to prepare. I need to be Joseph. And so I encourage you all to be Joseph and prepare for the 7 skinny years. Because we know the tribulation is only going to be 7 years long. 3.5 years of all kinds of tribulation. And then 3.5 years of things that we've never experienced as a human race that are going to be very bad. But they'll never be again. But we are going to be going through those events. It's very possible that no one knows the hour or the day that Jesus will return, except the Father, not the angels and not the Son. So, do your best to put back some food and some water and get some extra medicine, get some medical supplies so that you're prepared to care for yourself and your family when the famine comes. And the famine's coming. So, guys, you know I love you. And I know that I made this pretty long, and it wasn't my intention to do that. Excuse me. But I would like to ask each and every one of you to write on a sign, accountability, to put it in your car window, to write it on a piece of tape and stick it on your shirt, put it on a hat, make a poster board. Our government needs to be held accountable for the things that it is doing and the consequences of what they're doing. They're looking at, raising the debt ceiling. We'll be $30 trillion in debt. Our grandchildren will still be paying that debt. And there's 2 things that cause conflict. An imperialistic attitude of, I'm going to go out and conquer the world. The other is a financial situation. How it works out is if a country gets in a bind and they owe another country money and they can't pay them, they go to war. So, wars and rumors of wars. And as always, I love you. Oh, and I'm putting that John Campbell video, I'm hooking a link to it down in the description box. And my email address is in the description box. So if you have a question or you want to talk about something personal, if you email me, it's no one else's business. It's between you and me. And I'm not telling any secrets. But sometimes we have things that we need to talk to someone who isn't in our direct little group, because we don't want to be judged. We don't want to be, you know, um, pressurized. We don't want to be treated differently because we have an idea that's different than the group. So, or maybe you have questions concerning the scripture. I may not have the answer, but I'll find it. And as always, once again, thrice again, I love you.